Hello everyone, welcome back to Everyone Can Try podcast. We're super excited this week. It's not only episode 6 because we've come so far already, which seems crazy, but we're also talking about a really exciting topic with the expert herself, Lindsay. And we're super excited, all related around sleep. And we've got some amazing questions related around sport with sleep and just in general. So we're going to get things kicked off with Andy or Jonny. And yeah, welcome Lindsay to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great. It's brilliant to talk about sleep and sport. It's such an important topic.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. Obviously, as being an athlete for 20 years, sleep is something that's talked about quite a lot. I guess it's kind of just over my career, it's changed. It was something that, in some ways, sleep got in the way a little bit of training because it was kind of time you couldn't be training. To now, people prioritising rest so much, and to the extent now that not only do people use devices for going out training and all that now they use devices to measure sleep. So it's become really, really important. And actually, a lot of times now in training, one of the first things people say, did you sleep well last night? That's what your coach might ask you. And if you did sleep well, then it means you're okay to train. If you didn't, then you might adapt the session. So yeah, it's been interesting in my career to see that change. But I guess to start it off, I guess it's quite a big question, but and how much do athletes, I guess the general public and athletes need to sleep? On that question, I've heard people say 8 hours and then plus every hour for what you train, which is pretty impossible for a triathlete because my 8 hours and then some days I train 6 hours. So it basically means I'm either eating, sleeping or training. That's all I do, it's impossible. So I guess how much sleep do we actually really need?
So for a non-athlete and us mere mortals, so the science suggests that adults should get somewhere between 7 to 9 hours, and 8 is just that middle number. But 8 is banded around all the time as the ideal. Everyone should get their 8 hours of sleep. But actually, I find that really unhelpful because it's just putting everyone in one box. And just like we're not all the same height, we don't all have the same sleep needs. So if you're a normal person with normal activity levels, then you probably need somewhere between 7 hours to 9 hours regularly. But of course, there are some people who need a bit less, some people who need a bit more. But that's a kind of Goldilocks zone to keep you healthy. But for athletes, for Olympians, for really people who take their sport and fitness really seriously, they do need a bit more sleep, and that's for a number of reasons, which we could go into. But the 8 hours plus every hour of training, as you said, is really unreasonable because if you are training for that many hours, like 5-6 hours a day, how can you possibly get that amount of sleep? So it's just about being aware that you probably will need more sleep than if you're not training or than you used to before you maybe embarked on a career in sport. But typically, probably a minimum of 8 if you're a professional athlete, because that but it could be anything up to 12 hours or more. I've heard of, there's lots of talk of some Olympians talking about how they regularly get 12 hours sleep a night, which is what they need to physically repair their body, that you need sleep to process learning. And if you're learning skills in a sport, like maybe a new golf swing or a new technique, then you might need a bit more sleep to be able to process and absorb that learning, as well as getting your body the muscles to build and repair post-workout, and also giving you the stamina and the ability to do well before the next race.
12 hours seems a lot for me. I'd love to be able to sleep for 12 hours. But and is it quite as simple as, say, if you miss sleep, can you catch up with a nap during the day? That's another athlete kind of philosophy, in that if you miss a bit of sleep, say you slept for 7 hours, you had a bad night's sleep, it's fine because I can just nap for 2 hours during the day, especially as a professional athlete, because we have the ability to do that because, I've got a couple of hours off now before my next training session, so we can do that. Is it as simple as that, or does that not really work?
So if you get a lot of sleep at night and you want to top it up, or you need a bit extra, then naps are a fantastic way of topping that up. They really are, especially in the sport world when maybe you do have to train late and get up early for training. Then napping is a really important part of that. And when you're traveling and jet lag is involved and your sleep schedule is all out of whack. But to deliberately deprive yourself of sleep at night to take a 2-hour nap instead in the afternoon, it's not really the same quality of sleep that we get, but it's absolutely better to nap if you need to catch up on some sleep than to not nap, but it's not quite the same as getting the decent amount of bulk of your sleep at night, because our circadian rhythm, which is our internal 24-hour clock, which controls so much about us, but it controls our production of hormones and just everything, just absolutely everything. It also controls the type of sleep that we get. So if we are sleeping at night, when our circadian rhythm thinks it's nighttime, we tend to get the right proportion of deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep. Whereas if we lose some of that sleep at night, deliberately, maybe we think it's not important to sleep all at nighttime and we'll make up during the day, the sleep quality that we're getting during the day isn't quite the same. But like I said, it's a really good thing to do to top up with a nap, because naps are helpful and they do add to your sleep. It's just not a direct replacement for a good night's sleep at night.
Lindsay, I was just thinking that on the sort of length of nap, I've always, I'm an avid napper. I am a napper. I can't get through a day without actually putting my brain to sleep a little bit. What's your thoughts on time? So mine's always been between 20 and 30 minutes for a nap. And
That's
I know
perfect.
And I've looked at, obviously, taking longer naps. I do find I'm a bit groggy the longer I take.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have these things called sleep cycles. So when we go to sleep, we tend to go through light sleep, down into deep sleep, back through light sleep, and then have a little bit of REM sleep. And this whole sleep cycle typically takes somewhere around about an hour and a half, say. So if you have a nap of about 20 minutes, 20 to 30 maximum minutes, then you'll probably stay in light sleep. Now, if you have a longer nap, like an hour's nap, you'll find yourself going into the deepest part of sleep, which means if you wake up after an hour's sleep, you've had an hour's sleep, which is really good, and that will help you be refreshed, but you'll wake up in the middle of a sleep cycle with a thing called sleep inertia, because basically your body wants you to finish that full sleep cycle. It doesn't want you to wake up in the middle. So if you have a nap that is about an hour long, you'll wake up feeling groggy, disorientated, struggling to get going straight away. Whereas if you have that 20-minute nap, you'll immediately be awake and quite refreshed. And typically when people have a nap, it's because they want to top up and feel energized and keep going with their day. So you don't really want to have a nap that's going to leave you feeling sluggish. And there's nothing wrong with an hour's nap, genuinely. It's just that you'll take you 10, 15, 20 minutes after that nap to really kind of come to and feel refreshed again, which might feel a bit like a waste of time. So just having 20 to 30 minutes, say, is much better idea for a nap. And during the day when you nap is also kind of important, because if you nap too close to bedtime, you can really take away some of that sort of sleep pressure, sleep hunger that we get. It's like if you've got young kids, and you give them a snack, a small chocolate bar just before dinner, they're not going to eat their healthy dinner because you've taken the edge off their hunger. So if you have a nap too late in the day, you can kind of take the edge off that sleep hunger and struggle to sleep at night. So it's really an ideal time to have a nap just after lunch, really, that sort of time, the siesta time, between 12 and 2, half 2-ish, that sort of time. Is that when you nap?
Yeah, pretty much in that sort of time frame. And there's that thought process, isn't there, of having a bit of caffeine beforehand. And again, it's very individual, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I find that if I have a little coffee before my nap, finish whatever I try to do, and then I know it's another subject slightly, but I'm quite good at teaching myself to basically put myself to sleep. Mm-hmm. I'm not in a deep sleep or anything, but literally turning the engine off. And
no, that's great. And caffeine and naps is a genuinely scientifically researched positive thing. Of course, it depends on your caffeine tolerance, because some people, they can't metabolize caffeine that quickly, and having a coffee at 2 o'clock, say, it actually might, half the caffeine typically is on our system around 6 hours after that. So if you have a coffee at about 2, then come 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, you might still feel the effects of some of that caffeine, especially if you metabolize it a bit more slowly. But for other people, that's fine. It's not going to affect your sleep later. And actually, if you have a double espresso right before your nap, say, have a 20-minute nap, when you wake up, that caffeine will have then kicked in, giving you the benefit to make you feel more alert and less sleepy. And also you've had that nap when the caffeine wasn't immediately stopping you from napping. And this technique is highly used or suggested to be used in people who are driving late at night. Now, of course, we don't advocate you should drink coffee to drive. But if you are driving and you have to get home somewhere. And sleepy driving is an absolute killer. It's so dangerous. So if you are driving and you're feeling like, oh gosh, I'm feeling a bit fatigued, I'm feeling a bit tired, you need to pull over and rest. And actually having a coffee at that point, lying back in your seat for a 20-minute nap, will really help you to get that 20-minute sleep, to take the edge off your hunger, your sleep hunger, and your tiredness. And the caffeine kicks in, which will help you to be able to hopefully, get home more safely, which is really important, because we don't want people falling asleep at the wheel. And that's a really common major cause of driving accidents.
And and as far as training goes, throughout my whole career, there's been a bit of a kind of belief that some people train better in the morning and some people train better in the evening. Is that actually true? Or is that just people who are a bit lazy in the morning and a bit slow to get going? Or do some people actually train better at different times?
Yeah, so this is fascinating and amazing. The whole idea of our chronotype. So our chronotype is kind of our mainly genetic predisposition to when during the day we feel more alert or less alert. And lots of people had heard of the concept of larks and owls. Larks being early morning people and owls being late night people. And if you imagine, so I'm an owl, as it were. And so training at 6 a.m. for me seems like absolutely the worst thing I would possibly want to do, because it takes me a while to get going in the morning. But if you wanted me to do some exercise after work, I'm quite often get on my Peloton, at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, because that's when I finish my work and I'm still ready to go. But if you asked a typical lark when they want to exercise, it would not be at 8 o'clock in the evening. But the world and lots of sport, especially like swimmers, swimmers tend to get up really early to get into the pool. I mean, I deal with lots of swimmers who really have struggled with their sleep. If you're an owl and an Olympic winning swimmer, that's a really hard combination, because you're fighting your natural chronotype. So a lot of sport research at the moment is looking at tailoring timings of training to people's chronotypes, so really matching when you're at your best and trying to not be so at odds with it, not forcing everyone into the same pigeonhole. It's a bit like I said, 8 hours isn't a helpful amount of sleep for every single person, because some people need less and some people need more. Similarly, not everyone exercises best first thing in the morning or in the middle of the day or late in the evening. It's really about looking at you individually and when you feel most alert, when you can sort of get going, and also how long it takes you to cool down. Because if you're exercising too late, it might, your body, your endorphins, your heart rate, your physical core body temperature from exercising may be just too hot, that it takes you a long time to cool down, and therefore you won't be able to fall asleep just like that after training.
Yeah, that was my next question. Well, firstly, I've never understood why swimmers train at 5 o'clock in the morning. A lot of that is a bit of a kind of, that's what they've always done, I think, firstly.
Well, I think it's because the pools.
Pool times as well.
Pools, yeah. They have to do it before the pools are open for everyone else.
No, definitely, I've got that. But then elite swimmers still continue to do it for no reason, even though they've got all day. But that, again, is changing. I think one of the big reasons for that is sleep. They've realised now that you can actually go to the pool at 8 o'clock in the morning and maximise your sleep. But my other question, you mentioned it there about you train on your Peloton up to sometimes 8 o'clock. If I come off a hard bike ride, get back home at 8 o'clock, practically by the time you've had some food, had a shower, put a wash on, it's going to be a late night. It always takes me a while to switch off. So I guess how long would you say you need before you actually can go to sleep after a hard session? I actually find sometimes it's better to not force it. If you come back and you go, right, it's 9:30, I've got to go to bed, then you end up just laying in bed, not sleeping very well. Whereas if I go, okay, it's been a late night, I'll watch another bit of TV, another episode until 10:30, and then I go to sleep, I actually end up sleeping better. So how long should that period be?
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. It depends on individual chronotypes, and also it depends on fitness levels. So if someone is really, not a professional athlete, not very fit, then it's going to take them a lot longer to cool down after a workout. Whereas if you're an Olympic winning athlete, your ability to cool down, your heart rate to slow down after training is far superior. So you can cool down much, much quicker. So it's very much about looking at you individually. Studies have shown that generally exercising high intensity exercise, so not just a walk around the park or something a bit slower, but high intensity exercise, vigorous exercise, within 90 minutes of sleep does mean that it affects the ability to fall asleep. So you might take a bit longer to fall asleep, that kind of thing. But we have to weigh up, real life with scientific perfection, because for people who are not Olympic, normal, the likes of us normal people, that might be the only time we can exercise. Or maybe we're in a sports team that meet at 9:30 on a Thursday, and actually being part of a team sport, getting active, is far more important than worrying that it might take you an additional 10-15 minutes to fall asleep when you get home. And it makes me really sad when people talk to me and they say, well, I quit my team sport that I love because they exercise too late and it affects my sleep. So it's about, we can't make everything perfect. If you are doing something late at night, like being in a team sport, and you come home and you're a bit wired and you're a bit on, then of course, just like you said, Jonny, you just give yourself a bit of time. Realize, okay, normally I go to bed at 10:30, but tonight that's not going to happen because I just finished this training session. So I'm just going to chill out, read a book, watch a bit of telly, just have a relax and go to bed a little bit later when I've calmed down a bit. And that's fine. People can get a bit too fixated on perfection and lose track of what real life is and what's really important.
Yeah, that's why I actually stopped recording my sleep as well. I'd like to get your kind of advice on what you think about devices like Whoops, Oura Rings, whatever. And because being a bit of the competitive athlete, I ended up almost wearing my Whoop, going to bed, closing my eyes, and like, come on, sleep, you've got to sleep now. No, it's time to go to sleep. And I wake up in the morning, the first thing I did in the morning was check how many hours sleep I got, my quality of sleep, my recovery rate, and it almost became a bit of an obsession. And I put more pressure on myself to go to sleep than if I wasn't wearing one of those. So I guess I think they have got a place because for recovery, for people to, if you're picking up an illness, and even sometimes it can be good to force people to go to sleep at a certain time. But I also think if you're kind of person that gets too stressed by these things, maybe it's not so good thing as well.
Yeah. And again, I could not agree with you more. So I've had plenty of clients because I'm a sleep expert and I help people, as well as working with organizations and schools and all that stuff. I also work with a lot of individuals who really struggle with their sleep. I'm there to help them get over insomnia, basically. And more than several clients I've had whose sleep was fine, and then they decided to start tracking their sleep and they got some kind of sleep score and they were like, oh no, that isn't good enough. I have to try harder. I have to improve it. People like yourself who are high achievers, who want to be the best of the best. And before you know it, you're trying to control the uncontrollable, because frankly, sleep is something we cannot control. We cannot force ourselves to go to sleep like that. It's literally impossible. All we can do is to create an environment in which we are calm, tired, it's, everything is right and sleep's likely to happen, but we can't force it. So if you start tracking your sleep and you want to get a better score, it puts such pressure on you to do better that then it increases your anxiety levels, which then directly mean you don't sleep well. So there is absolutely a positive place for, the Oura Rings, the Apple Watches, the Whoops, all that stuff. Because for people who haven't been prioritizing their sleep, or people who are, maybe athletes and they want to be a bit more aware of, what am I really doing? Like, you would track what you eat, you would track your weight, you would track how much water you drink a day, what your exercise schedule. You're tracking all these things to sort of see, okay, am I really sticking to the plan that I want to? How am I doing? Then having a sleep tracker helps to give you an objective sort of marker of how well you're sleeping. And then you go, oh yeah, you know what? I have been doing quite well at going to bed at the time I intended and that kind of thing. But if you're using it for, I need to, be the A-star top of the class sleeper, it becomes ridiculous because you start getting so stressed. And the reality is most of these devices, they're getting better and better. They really are, but they are not completely infallible, and they can misdiagnose or I can't know what I'm saying. They can attribute that you're in one sleep stage, like they'll say that you were in light sleep, really you're in deep sleep, or vice versa. They can think that you were asleep when you were really awake, or vice versa. So they're not completely diagnostically accurate because frankly your brain is not in your wrist or on your finger, your brain is in your head. So the only way you can really tell exactly what sleep stage you are in is by monitoring your brain activity with a polysomnography. So we want to use them, and they can be really helpful as a sort of general guide to help you track like you would track other things in life. But as soon as it starts to become a bit more of an obsession, then just like how we can, people with anorexia, the worst thing they can do is weigh themselves every day, because then you start to become really fixated on your weight and it becomes really unhealthy. So in a similar way, if your sleep isn't that great, you're a bit worried about your sleep, tracking it can actually sort of escalate that anxiety. And just like with anorexia and weight, weighing yourself, it can just become really, really unhealthy and make it a lot worse.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I also think these devices are good as almost another option to back up things that you might already know as well. It's almost, you've had a bad night's sleep, you're not feeling great in the morning, you go, oh, I did. But I kind of knew that anyway, just like I've used them before where you're coming down with a cold and it gives you a really bad recovery score and you go, okay, my devices tell me that I'm getting ill as well. So I definitely am getting ill. So now I need to kind of back off. And I guess we want to come on to racing and traveling soon, but I guess just quite quickly, I guess what are the best advice for having a good sleep environment? I listened to one of your other podcasts, and it's extreme Scandinavian method, which is even sleeping in separate rooms, isn't it? I heard you say that maybe, So I heard you may say that maybe a compromise is separate duvets. But I guess what techniques do you have for a good night's sleep?
So, and again, there's perfection and then there's the real world. So perfection world is that we are in a completely dark, with no light whatsoever, completely silent room with an amazing mattress and fantastic pillows and bedding that is breathable, allows air to flow. The room is a perfect temperature. Your room smells nice. It's tidy without any mess whatsoever. This is perfection, absolutely. And all those things will help you to sleep better. But real life isn't like that. And we don't need perfection. We just want it to be good enough. So we need to make sure that you're not sleeping without curtains. I've had some clients who literally, for whatever reason, they've moved into a new house, they haven't got around to installing curtains yet. And you're like, well, of course you're waking up at 4 a.m. to the sun. But it doesn't mean you necessarily need blackout blinds. Just dark enough curtains is normally fine. And actually, I genuinely recommend that people don't go directly to blackout blinds, because yes, that's perfect. But what happens when you go on holiday or you go to stay with somebody else, or, or your kids, they go and stay with granny and grandma don't have blackout blinds. Suddenly they aren't used to sleeping in a slightly, brightish environment. So yes, blackout blinds are great, but we don't need them. When we were thousands of years ago, we were cavemen, we didn't even have, beds. We didn't have walls. We just had a cave. So we are, as humans, perfectly capable of sleeping when it's noisy and bright. But of course, we sleep better when it's dark and quiet. So back to a perfect bedroom. Ideally, it should be somewhere, a good temperature. So like 16 to 18, 19 degrees Celsius. It's a sort of perfect room temperature. But of course, we all have different individual variations. If you're somebody who is warmer than your partner, or likes a cooler bedroom or a warmer bedroom than your partner, you're not going to both be happy at the same room temperature, in which case that's where the 2 separate duvets can be really helpful, because you can choose a heavier tog or a lighter tog duvet into your partner. And then if you get too hot or too cold, you can throw your single duvet off or pull it on without disturbing your partner. Mattresses, lots of people, they'll maybe pay a lot of money for a mattress, but then think that's me for life. And actually, mattresses do tend to have a finite lifespan. So again, think about, if you're not sleeping brilliantly and you're waking up with a bit of a backache, when did you last replace your mattress? And did you buy your mattress when you were a different weight than you are now? Or did you buy your mattress when you were a single person? Now there are 2 of you sleeping in that bed, because generally speaking, the heavier we are, the more firm the mattress needs to be to support us and keep our spine kind of neutral in bed. Sleeping positions and pillows, we tend to need more pillows or higher pillows if we're sleeping on our side compared to on our back. If we're back sleepers, we tend to need a bit of a flatter pillow. And if you're a front sleeper, which is the least common sort of type of sleeping, but lots of people do, then maybe no pillow whatsoever to sort of keep your spine neutral. So dark room, cool room. If you don't have double glazing, if you live somewhere really noisy, then you might want to consider like a white noise machine. because if you live somewhere in a city where there is fire engines going past, police, people screaming, coming out the pub at midnight, that can be quite disruptive to sleep. In which case, if you don't have good quality double glazing, then rather than spending thousands of pounds to fix that, which we don't all have, you could consider earplugs. But there are potential issues with earplugs in that they can cause buildup of earwax and also mean that you might not be able to hear if there was a fire alarm going off or your kids crying. So a white noise machine can help to just sort of give a background noise that helps to sort of mask the sounds of a screaming child outside or a barking dog down the street, which can be helpful. But a white noise machine, if you sleep somewhere already quite quiet, then it won't really help at all. So it's not like white noise machine is a magical fix for sleep, but it just helps if you live somewhere noisy. I think that's everything about a bedroom.
I found actually, Lindsay, when me and wife having 4 kids, we bought the largest bed going. So we basically are in 2 separate area codes. And I'm a front sleeper. And I'm a front sleeper. So I always sleep off the edge of the bed with my face off the bed to attention, which is really strange. Well, you might think it's quite strange. And I fall asleep immediately. But as long as I'm in my own little section, with no contact whatsoever, and the split duvet thing's great because you don't want to be sleeping and someone pulling the duvet off you. I just think it's very, they do a lot of it in Europe, don't they? A lot of split duvet is quite common over there.
It really is. And in the UK, it's just not been common at all. We've always had a shared double duvet, and if you're a couple. But in reality, it makes so much sense. You just buy 2 single duvets. You buy 2 single duvet covers that are the same. No one is going to know that you have 2 single duvets. They'll think you're a normal couple with a shared double duvet, and no one needs to know. Great for menopause. It's great for if one of you is a fidgety sleeper, if one of you is a shift worker and has to get out of bed in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's really, really good solution. And yes, having the biggest bed you can afford and that will physically fit in your bedroom is another fantastic plan, because the bigger bed we have, the less we're likely to disturb the other person. It gives us a bit more space. Yeah, really fantastic. I'm lucky enough to have a super king bed, which is amazing. So again, my husband and I, we don't need to, just like you could not know he's there. It's so far away.
The bed took over the entire room. There wasn't a room. The room was very small, but it was actually a bed. The room was a bed, but that was the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the sleep divorce was sort of quite I think a famous person that I think mentioned that they've had a sleep divorce, which just means basically sleeping in separate rooms. But if that works for you, lots of rich people, they don't share bedrooms, so don't feel bad if you want to sleep separately from your partner. It doesn't mean that your relationship is on the rocks. It actually just means that you care about your sleep and want to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can get away with that one. I'm not sure. It'll go down too well. But I guess obviously for athletes, a big part is racing as well and traveling in different hotels. And I've got 2 athlete kind of myths here. The first one is everyone always said the night before a race the sleep doesn't matter. It's the nights into that are the most important. You're always going to be nervous for the Olympic Games or whatever, so you're probably not going to sleep very well. So we've all told ourselves, bank your sleep before, and you're absolutely fine. We'll come on to that one. Is that one true? And secondly, altitude. Do you sleep better at altitude? Because that's another one. I've always gone on altitude camps. I don't know if that's because altitude camps tend to be in a cool environment, a quiet environment. You're staying in quite often like a ski chalet setup, so you got good shutters, or is that part of it, or do you actually sleep better at altitude?
Okay, so I'll start with the altitude one. So studies typically show that sleep quality, like the amount of the different stage of sleep you get, like deep sleep, and the sleep quality that you get, and the amount of sleep that you get, actually tends to be worse when you're at high altitudes because of the low oxygen. But you will adapt to it. But initially, when you first go straight to the high altitude, that sleep does tend to be a bit worse. It affects your breathing. If people have sleep apnea, it can make that a bit worse. And therefore, going up to a high altitude, maybe doing it in stages might be better, specifically sleep-wise. But of course, once you've been there for a little while, with the training camps, obviously you do that to maximize you. If you're training in low oxygen, it's better for your bodies to train. Yeah, I'm not Olympic athlete, so I don't know these things. But again, it's like that weighing up things. You're going to get such benefit from that level of training at high altitudes, but your sleep may not be, you know, totally optimal, but it'll probably adjust over a few days, and you'll sort of get back to normal-ish. But on the other hand, exactly, if you're sleeping somewhere really beautiful, you're looking out on mountains, you have an amazingly nice hotel room, you might well sleep better, just because, you know, scientifically you're not likely, it's not recommended as an improvement to sleep for sure, but that doesn't mean to say that people won't sleep better. Sorry, what was the other question that you said? Oh, the night before a race, yeah?
The night before a race, this is the age-old athlete, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So basically, the night before a race, studies have shown that if you sleep for more time before a race, you're likely to have improved time, improved stamina, and improved accuracy. However, the night before race, you're going to be so anxious and stressed that it is highly unlikely that you can sleep brilliantly, as much as you would want to. And the same thing goes with exams. I work with schools a lot. People who want to get, the A star, they want to be the best at that exam tomorrow, and they know that if you sleep well the night before an exam, your exam performance is going to be slightly improved. But then if you are aware of that, all that does is make you even more stressed, because you're like, oh my goodness, I have to sleep tonight, otherwise tomorrow will be a disaster. So the point is, yes, sleeping well the night before an event, like a sporting event, is probably going to be helpful. Sleeping well the night before a mental event like an exam is probably going to be helpful, but the effect is small. And actually what you can control, because you can't control how well you sleep the night before an exam or a race, you can't, your anxiety is going to be through the roof. Of course you're not going to sleep well, no one would, is doing what you can control, which is the nights before. Building up, deliberately sleeping for an hour more than normal, or an hour to 2 hours more in the days leading up to it, is going to mean that you have it's not exactly the same, but it's going to give you the ability to have kind of a baseline of good sleep. But you can't bank sleep, but you certainly can improve it somewhat. And remember that how you do in that race the next day is only fractionally dependent on how well you slept the night before. It's tiny. It's much more dependent on how much training you have done, how much good nutrition you have had, how much sleep you've had in the days leading up to it. So I agree with you. I think we really want to be thinking that the night before race, it doesn't matter, because you can't control it. And if you get literally no sleep whatsoever the night before race, your performance the next day is going to be fine. It may be fractionally less than it would be if you'd got 8-9 hours unbroken sleep the night before. But which of your fellow athletes in that race are going to have slept for 8-9 hours the night before the race? None of them, because you're all in the same boat. You've all got the same anxieties. You all want to achieve the same. So yeah, focus on what you can control, which is making sure you're going into it from a good place. So don't sleep deprive yourself from a week or two before and then think that you can cope on no sleep the night before. That's silly. Definitely bank some sleep beforehand. That's going to help you a lot.
And what can we do to make that hotel environment feel more like home? I'm terrible at going to a new hotel, and especially the first night, it takes me a little bit of time to get to sleep. I get part of that is definitely because if you're in a hotel room on your own, sometimes you've got your phone there, you've got the TV there, you're like, I'll carry on watching Gladiator on BBC Three for a bit longer, or whatever's on there. So what can you do to make that environment a bit better and you sleep better in that hotel room?
So what you're talking about there is the environment and your choices. So they're two sort of different things. So the environment, we can't guarantee the hotel is going to have an amazing mattress. It's going to have the great kind of curtains that you want. But what we can do is bring some things from home with us. And I do this. So if I'm going somewhere, I might well bring my pillow from home. Not because I'm a good sleeper. I'm not obsessed with having a perfect night's sleep. But if I bring my pillow with me, it's that sense of consistency. And if we have something regular that we use every night, it just helps us to feel more at home. So you consider bringing a pillow with you, or bring an eye mask. And then if the curtains are rubbish, you've got an eye mask and that can keep things dark. You could have, if you use a pillow spray, now using a lavender relaxing pillow spray, it's not guaranteed to make everyone sleep well, but it can be a really helpful part of a pre-bedtime routine that kind of helps signal to your body, oh yeah, this smell I associate with it being bedtime soon, so it makes you feel sleepy. If you use a consistent, sleepy spray before bed on your pillow, take that with you when you go away. Then you can spray the hotel pillow and it smells like home. So, or having a consistent chamomile tea or a sleepy tea before bed. Again, having a chamomile tea or a sleepy tea isn't going to magically make you sleep well, but if you do that before bed consistently at home, then you take those same tea bags with you, and I take my sleepy tea bags with me, have it before bed. It just feels like, it may be a different bed and different environment, but certain things feel like home, and it should help you to feel a bit better. But then what you also talked about was making maybe not great sleep hygiene choices. And, being on our phone, we might think, if you're feeling a bit nervous, that, scrolling through your phone will help you to be distracted. But of course, social media, TikTok videos, Instagram, they are designed, people have spent billions to make those as addictive as possible. So if we are scrolling through those before bed, what happens is we don't get to 10, half 10, 11 when we intend to go to bed and go, oh, oops, I should stop now. We're so absorbed in it that we forget. And then before we know it, it's 11, 12, 1, 2 in the morning. We're like, oops, I've just spent the last 3 hours scrolling through cat videos. Now I'm never going to get enough sleep. So it's really important to have a bedtime reminder. You can get a morning wake alarm, but you can also, on most phones, set a bedtime reminder to be like, you know what, I really should be going to bed now, or have screen time enabled so that it reminds you to stop scrolling, doing certain things in at a certain time, so that you do remember to go to bed, because consistency in getting enough sleep regularly is so important, especially for athletes. Going to bed at a similar time each night, getting up at the same kind of time each morning, 7 days per week, and trying to get the right amount of sleep every night, not going, oh, well, I won't get enough sleep Monday through Thursday, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll stockpile it and try and build up and get loads of sleep on those days. And overall, that'll balance out, because that's not the same. We have to get consistently the right amount of sleep regularly to be our most healthy. And if you're an athlete and you want to be the best of the best, you really want to be doing those things and getting enough sleep every day of the week, not just some of the days.
That's absolutely fascinating, and I think it's been our longest podcast so far, because it's so fascinating. And I have got one more last question, and I'm conscious of time, and that is on jet lag. And this is more of a personal one for me, because I've done it both ways. I once went to race in Tokyo, and I flew out on the Wednesday evening, arrived Thursday afternoon, race Saturday morning, and came home Sunday morning. Is a way of you get in and you get out. Because the philosophy always used to be, you either get in and get out very quickly, or you go quite a long time before and adjust the time zone. And almost that middle ground was the worst thing you could do, because you kind of half-heartedly adjusted but didn't adjust fully. Is that still true, or has that kind of is that idea got rid of now? And it's more, if you really want to perform at your best, you go 2 weeks before, you get on the time zone, and you do it properly, rather than drop in last minute.
So if you drop in last minute, it depends what time your race is. So if you drop in last minute, you're still going to be in your original time zone. So let's say it's UK time zone. So if your body thinks it's in the UK time zone and you go somewhere else and you race at the time when your body thinks is 7 a.m., for example, that's probably okay. But if you race at a time that your body thinks is 2 a.m., even if you've had you've slept on the plane for some reason on the way over, if your body thinks it's 2 a.m, you're not going to be your optimal, because your circadian rhythm is at the completely wrong time zone. But going really far before, yes, you can do that. Or what you can do is to start moving your time zone nearer the destination time zone while still in the original country. So for example, if I was going to Greece, and I was only going to be in Greece for a very short amount of time, so that's not long enough to adjust to the Greek time zone, what I could do is start going to bed and waking up earlier, sequentially in sort of the days before I travel, so that when I travel, I'm already at least nearer that time zone, if not on that time zone. So you don't have to physically go there. And if you're going east, it's about going to bed earlier and waking up earlier in the days before to get near that time zone. If you're going west, like to America from the UK, it's about going to bed a bit later and waking up a bit later to get you there. And as well as moving your bedtime and wake times, you want to move your meal times as well to match the destination time zone. And we can sort of naturally move our circadian rhythm, our 24-hour clock, by about an hour a day. So, if you have sort of 5 hours before, then you can probably, 5 days before travel, you can probably move your circadian rhythm by about 5 hours, say-ish. It's not exactly that precise, but there or thereabouts. So yeah, I would really recommend, if you're going there just for a short amount of time, just working on your time zone in your original country and just moving to, naturally going to bed much earlier. If you're going to bed at 7 and waking up at 4 in the morning, just so that you can get much nearer that destination time, that's not so bad for our life here in the UK. And then you go to that new destination and you've only got an hour or two difference, say. But yes, if you want to go travel 2 weeks before and properly adjust, that's fantastic. But how does that match up with your ability to cope with your family and your training schedule? And we have to weigh up, is that actually going to be beneficial if we're just focusing on our circadian rhythm and our time zone, but we're neglecting the other things that are going to make us do our best in our race?
I've seen athletes do that before, try and change their time zone, obviously at home. And like you say, it does work. It's just sometimes practically quite hard because if you train in the group, for example, you might have to then not train in the group because everything's different and it can knock you out of sync. But yeah, definitely, it is worth doing if you can do it. And if you, like you say, you're going over for a short period of time and you want to get over and get back and still perform. But no, thank you. It's been absolutely fascinating. I just wish I'd prioritise sleep more in my career earlier as well. Like I say, it's been interesting for me to go for that generation of sleep being almost getting in the way of training to sleep being as important as training. So no, thank you very much. It's been absolutely fascinating, absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on. Honestly, it's been really fascinating listening to it. And I definitely now have some tips as well. So I know how to optimize my sleep. It will be separate duvets. That's the first one that I'm going to be taking off. What's the best way for anyone listening to contact you if anyone's interested in anything further?
Sure. So I'm on social media at Dr Browning Sleep, Dr Browning Sleep. And my website is troublesleeping.co.uk. Yeah. And if anyone wants to drop me a message or follow me on social media, that would be amazing.
Amazing. I'll make sure to pop all the details as well below in the podcast. So if anyone couldn't hear that all the way or running or doing whatever, then you can check in the bio and they'll be there to contact Lindsay. And again, thank you so much, Lindsay, for popping on. It's honestly been such an honour to listen to you and hear the chat and everything about that.
Thanks so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for popping on. Honestly, that was such a great session. I'm so excited for everyone listening to this. If you've got any value, please let us know. We'd love to know. Tag us in your socials, tag us where you're listening and how you're listening and what you enjoyed most about today's podcast, because I think it will help a lot of people for sure. We are now really excited to announce our Athlete of the Week, which we will now switch to. And massive congratulations to them. We are here with our Athlete of the Week, Alice. Massive congratulations, Alice, for joining us and being the Athlete of the Week.
No, fab. Thank you very much for having me. What a privilege.
Anytime. So let's get straight into it. How did you get into multisport?
I actually haven't been into multisport very long. This is probably my first real season. I ironically tried to start it a couple of years ago and then broke my leg. So I was off injury for probably about 18 months. So there's a bit of a comeback for the start that never happened. But I came into it from a cycling background. So cycled for a year or so before that. And then thought, why do one thing when I can do three? So.
Oh my gosh, love that. And what would you say is your favourite discipline out of the three? Swim, bike, or run?
Definitely the cycling.
Really?
The swimming has got better actually. I swam as a kid, but learning to re-swim again as an adult was probably a very humbling experience. But that's got a lot better recently. And I guess the better you are at something, the more you enjoy it. So the swimming has improved. Me and running still have very much a love-hate relationship.
Oh, I love that. And what would you say your favourite thing about joining the squad is with Brownlee Fitness?
I think being part of that community, triathlon and multisport is probably one of those things that can be quite lonely at times. You know, you're doing a lot of training, and unless you've got people around you that do similar things, you're spending an awful lot of time on your own. It's also quite an overwhelming thing to pick up. You're picking up 3 sports potentially that you've never done before. There's a lot to learn and things like that. So I think being part of the squad, the chats and everything else, the team is so supportive from the coaches down to the other athletes. And I think having that community around you keeps you sane and on the straight and narrow when it comes to something like this, particularly when you're doing kind of longer distance events and stuff like that.
I love that. It's so important to have a community, especially when it comes to triathlon. And of course, we're incredibly lucky that we've got Jonny and Alistair as well involved, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
And last question, what would you say your most embarrassing moment has been in multisport so far?
I mean, I've not done a whole load of events, so I guess from an event perspective, there's probably nothing that jumps to mind. But I think probably the most embarrassing moment was the first time I went and did an open water swim and didn't put my wetsuit on properly and had a complete panic attack for the first 400 meters because I'd not pulled it up over my shoulders properly and therefore just couldn't move, and went into water a little bit confident that I can swim now, and then basically had to almost be rescued halfway around from having a panic attack. So that probably would be up there. But I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people. That's what I keep telling myself anyway.
Well, if anyone has heard it, please let us know. Give Alice some comfort and we can let her know that actually it's not just that. But it happens. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Alice, for coming on the podcast. We will tag you in, and hopefully some people that have listened have gained some inspiration from you. And yeah, a massive congratulations again.
Thanks for having me.
And to end there, we are going to have our podcast next session, which we are looking forward to. Topic has not yet been announced, so if you've got something on your mind that you really want us to talk about, please let us know and we can then have a chat about it beforehand. But again, thank you guys so much for listening in and tuning in wherever you're listening. We really appreciate all the support and super excited for our next session. And again, a massive thank you to Dr. Lindsay Browning for coming on. All her details will be attached. And thank you so much, everyone.